Well, we're going to get started. Welcome, everyone, to today's Local Lens. We're excited to have you with us tonight. Before we dive in, I'd like to review our group agreements. You might be familiar with these. This is something we do at the start of every session. The purpose of today's session is to be a space for learning and conversation among members of community councils and the public. The goal of the session is to dive deep into various governmental structures within the municipality. As part of today, we're agreeing to treat each other with respect, recognize our neighborhood's unique qualities, and allow everyone a chance to participate. Some logistical notes. At the end, we will be having a Q&A session. Please stay on mute unless you're called on. If you have a question, you can either raise your hand with the raise hand react button at the bottom, or you can drop your question in the chat and I'll read them in order. Please keep your questions on topic and be considerate of the time. We do have a hard stop after an hour. At the end of the session, we'll provide you contact information and additional places where you can learn more, and we encourage you to invite presenters to your next community council meeting. So today's topic is kind of a follow-up on one we did last year. We did kind of a budget 101, and part of the budgeting process, kind of in the early stages, is bonds. And I'm excited to be joined by Nolan today from the mayor's office, kind of explaining quite a complicated subject, hopefully in ways that we can all understand. Nolan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thanks for having me. Do you want me to go ahead and share
Yeah,
that?
it's
All
all
right.
yours.
Okay. Thanks. Okay. And hopefully you guys can see my slides, my title slide. To go ahead and kick things off, I'm going to give a bit of an overview about what's in our 2026 bond package. But I'm also going to go through a little bit of how these projects get selected, what our overall capital budgeting process looks like, how bonds work, and then walk you through the components of our 2026 bond package, what kinds of projects they contain, and some other details about them. So, as you guys probably, I'm guessing that the group that's here, you guys are probably some of the more active early voters, and so you would have had ballots get mailed out on March 17th. So I'm guessing that many of you have probably already voted, but if not, you have until, of course, April 7th to get ballots submitted. There's 6 assembly races going on. There's 8 bonds, and I'm going to talk mainly about the 7 bonds that are for the municipality. The other one is for the school district. And then there's one special levy as well, which is also for the school district as well. These are the 7 bond packages that we have, 7 bond props that we have that are currently on the ballot. So the roads and drainage, parks and recreation, police service area, community facilities, area-wide public safety, fire, and then the Chugach access service area. And I'll tell you a little bit about each one of those in a moment. But first, let's dig into give a little bit of an overview of how projects get selected and how this whole kind of process works. The capital budget document. This is if you guys this is the budget, part of the budget that's passed each year toward the end of the year, November, December timeline. It includes the general government operating budget, general government capital budget, as well as the utility enterprise budgets. And this document is the capital budget. It actually is 2 pieces to it. It's the capital improvement budget and the overall capital improvement program. And I'll explain what those 2 things are, what distinguishes those 2 things. The budget is, of course, proposed by the mayor, but there's a lot of inputs that go into it before that, and then amended and passed by the assembly following a whole kind of public process that requires hearings and there's work sessions that take place and lots of public discussion for that process, of course. And then, of course, the budget, when passed, including the capital budget, is carried out by municipal departments. So we talk about the capital improvement budget and the capital improvement program, the CIB and the CIP. So what's the difference between those? The capital improvement budget is for the fiscal for one fiscal year, and it has the project scope, specific funding sources, and then the actual cost of what we're actually paying for in the upcoming fiscal year. The capital improvement program is a longer term outlook. That's the next 6 years. So it includes kind of these are the projects that are intended to be completed in the next 6 years. But not all 6 of those are actually budgeted, right? So we're only budgeting for 1 year at a time, but we recognize that that's part of a much longer list of projects and needs and priorities that are listed fully in the capital improvement program. So this takes a longer view of things. And each year, that is when the budget is passed, you're also passing the assembly is also approving the capital improvement program, but it's not funded yet, at least not all of it, until next year, until subsequent years when projects are actually put into the budget, into the capital improvement budget. So these two components, and this is what the capital improvement budget looks like summarized. What you see here is that these are the departments, and then the source of funding, whether it's bonds, state, federal, and other. And so bonds are really what we're talking, the biggest component of what we're talking about. And you can see that this is the largest part of our capital our capital improvement budget is the bond package, $65 million this year that's proposed. There's also a little bit of money that we get from some state grants, and then this other category that's about 9.8 million. That's largely projects that are funded out of other other general government revenues, right? So that are funded. These ones are usually referenced also in our operating budget. And so the total amount of 105.6 million is what is our capital improvement budget. You'll notice that the state column is pretty blank. That is something that didn't historically happen because we used to have a lot of money that came from the state for capital projects. This is an example of this is what it used to look like just for roads and drainage. We used to get more money from the state in capital grants than we did, from our own bond package. But that money really shut off starting in about 2015 and really hasn't come back since then. So bonds really are the biggest way that we can fund our infrastructure projects. And this is I'm just putting this here to show you what the capital improvement program looks like. This is a sort of a summary of it. This is listing out all 6 years. You'll notice that 2026 is actually the same numbers as our capital improvement budget, because the capital improvement program includes the current fiscal year's budget, as well as, from 2027 outward. These projects are not yet budgeted. They're just projects that have a cost associated with them that we think need to be done sometime in the next few years. You look at the amounts on the bottom, you see that the amounts are much bigger than what we're funding this year, at least for the next few years. And that what that really reflects is that that doesn't mean that that's actually what's going to be spent next year. What it really reflects is that there's this much larger list of projects that have been identified as needs by the municipality, needs by the community, and that we cannot fund all of them every year. And so the capital improvement program is really this giant listing of projects, of which we have to take some of them and prioritize what we can and fund it. The needs are always much greater than what we can actually budget. Then just to put up an example here, if you look at the budget document itself, it lists the individual projects that make up the capital improvement program. And here, this is for the fire department, just as an example. You can see that these are all things that the fire department has identified as things that they need to fund, and that in 2026, we've budgeted for 2 of them that are in our bond package. And there's a whole bunch of other things that are from the 2027 onward that are not yet budgeted. And those are unmet needs that we hope to sort of chip away at in the next few years, but that there are always a shortage of resources to fund every need that we have. So how do projects get onto the capital improvement program and the capital improvement budget? So here's the basic way that it works. The community input portion of it Community council surveys, and I think probably you guys are all familiar with what those look like. That's one really important input for us. The projects that are proposed through that survey, which I think that survey is open right now for community councils. That's a really important way that projects or needs are flagged and added, ultimately added into the capital improvement program. A big piece of how this happens is that municipal departments identify needs for capital needs, and that happens through a few different ways. One is that they understand the life cycles and the replacement schedules of a lot of assets, and they're like, okay, well, this fire truck needs to be replaced. This building needs a new roof. We need new vehicles to be purchased. There's a lot of different ways that this can happen, but departments are tracking that. This road needs to be resurfaced, and so forth. And then there's also a lot of plans and sort of technical studies. The municipality, if you guys have all been around this for a while, that we love our plans. We have master plans for parks. We have transportation plans. We have land use plans. All of those plans entail projects that require improvements or upgrades or new infrastructure to be done. And so that's another piece of input that we have for it too. And then a lot of it's safety and code compliance. This happens a lot with our community facilities where we have safety challenges with some of them that are related to whether they're in compliance with code or not. And we have to make sure that that they're brought up to code and that they're as safe as they can be. And then in addition to that, so that you have your mayoral priorities. The mayor comes into office and we have this big long list of projects that have been gone through departments and that have gone from community input. But the mayor can also look at that and say, well, I really want to prioritize projects that involve public safety, or really want to prioritize taking care of the assets that we have. And so the administration can pull projects as well that are like, okay, well, let's take this project, put it into our package, into our proposed budget this year. The assembly also can do that too. They can also suggest projects that can be added. The assembly can adjust the overall amount of the capital improvement budget up or down. They can delete or add projects. They have the power they are the appropriating body of the municipality, and so have that ability to do that. So all of these things shape what goes out in front of voters. And so we have to so these bonds that we talk about are general obligation bonds. Probably many of you know about bonds already, but by way of reminder for some of you, or for new information for some, what we're talking about when we talk about bonds is that this is debt that's issued by the municipality and sold to investors. So it's essentially someone loaning us the money. Bonds are a really awesome tool to use because they are low cost financing. They're tax exempt for the investors who buy them. The income that they produce doesn't have to be taxed, and that helps keep their interest rates low. So the interest rate, I was just checking on this morning, that interest rate that we expected to pay on these bonds, that we expect to pay, is about 4%. A 30-year mortgage, if you were to go buy a house for someone with very high credit, good credit, would be about 6.5%. So municipal governments, because we have the ability we're seen as very low risk to creditors. We have the ability to bond, and we have the ability to issue tax exempt bonds. We get a very favorable interest rate. So the municipality has the ability to borrow money very cheaply, which is a great thing for us as far as funding infrastructure. Of course, it does have to be repaid naturally. It's a 20-year repayment term. And also this last point, that it does require voter approval. This is actually in the state constitution, state of Alaska constitution, that municipalities cannot issue debt without the approval of voters, right? So this is why this is a requirement. Each year, we can't take on this debt if voters don't approve of it. So that's why these propositions are every year we have something to ask voters for approval on. There's another dimension to this too, is that we have Anchorage is divided, into service areas. There's our road service areas, that the largest part of the city that are the Anchorage Road and Drainage Service Area. And then there's limited road service areas and rural road service areas. And then you have the Parks and Recreation Service Area, the Police service area, which doesn't include Girdwood turning an arm. And so you have these overlapping kind of service areas in Anchorage, and so you notice that everybody votes anytime there's a bond that applies to even one service area. Everybody votes on it, but not everybody pays that bond, pays the debt service that goes to that bond, and that's something that's in your ballot language. To take an example from the road bond, I've highlighted this section here that it says, how much is it. It always has to say how much the bond is, and then how much we expect it takes in taxes in order to retire the debt, and then I've highlighted here at the bottom. It is without cost to properties in Chugiak, Eagle River, Girdwood, and other areas outside the service area. So voters in those areas are voting yes or no on this, but they will not be paying it because it only is people who live in the Anchorage Road and Drainage Service area that are going to pay it. This happens a lot. You'll notice that Girdwood bonds on the ballot, they always say, we're going to it's going to be paid for by an assessment on properties in Girdwood, but everybody votes on all of the debt, and there's a reason for that, is because the debt is an obligation of the entire municipality of Anchorage, not just that one area. So even though that one area is all that's going to pay for it, everybody still has to vote on it, and it's something that's a legal requirement. So Mayor LaFrance's capital project priorities were these that she set out. What first was to take care of what we have, take care of the infrastructure that we have. Second, to prioritize safety, whether that's infrastructure safety, fire safety, making sure that our first responders have the ability to respond, and investing in our community's future. How do we continue to ensure that we have a high quality of life? So I'll walk you through the bond package that we have now in front of us. So the road and drainage bond is always the largest component, about $38.5 million. Anchorage has 1,281 miles of road, so it's enough. It could drive between Anchorage and Adak, way out in the Aleutians, if you lined up all those road miles. That we prioritize for this one. Here I'm show you some pictures of some roads that are in rough shape. This bond includes. There's always a few projects, always a few pieces of it that include federal match. So where our bond money is leveraging, usually at a 90-10 split, some federal money. That's always very helpful. So your tax dollar is going pretty far with that. And so we do a lot of. This is how we fund a lot of our resurfacing, our chip sealing. Redoing curb and gutter and drainage infrastructure. Also, a lot of other pieces and lots of other pieces that help to ensure that our roads are up to par. We have a lot more focus on maintaining our existing roads rather than on building new roads. I think as the city has kind of come to a certain maturity level, and we've largely been developed. Much of our footprint. So you can see here that drainage. Here's another one. Drainage is a huge issue. I think you're going to see this as the snow melts. That we're going to have lots of these pools of standing water. We're going to have lots of drainage components that are blocked with snow and ice, and so this always becomes really visible around this time of year. But fixing this, keeping sure that our roads are good and well surfaced is a big priority for the road bond this year. We're talking about safety. A few pieces here. Our community facilities bond includes some fixes to the Performing Arts Center down in the lower right. There's a lot of code issues that need to be brought up to spec on the Performing Arts Center. And then also another example at Chugiak Eagle River Senior Center has some projects on there. There's also some boiler replacements for the old city hall downtown, which is going to be fixed up to become a downtown library ultimately. This is about taking care of our community facilities, making sure that they're up to snuff as far as code safety goes. So that's the facilities bond. The area-wide public safety and transit bond. This includes funding for ambulances and transit vehicles. Also for a few safety improvements like school zone safety improvements along our roads. A few traffic calming implements, a few areas where there's some speed bumps and some other traffic calming measures that are needed. Transit bus stops as well. And so this is those two components: public safety and transit. So just under $9 million in that on that proposition. Two public safety related ones. The police service area bond, 350,000, very small ask. That is for two things. One is some fixes to the exterior of the Elmore Police Station. Very older building, needs a lot of maintenance, and then also the parking lot to the police station has a big drainage problem. Where we have, to the point where we have staff putting down lumber, 2x4s to walk through areas where there's a lot of standing water certain times of the year. So we really want to do better and keep that building up to snuff. The fire service bond is actually for the replacement of some fire engines, just like the vehicle that you see there, just simply vehicles past their useful life needing to be replaced. Investing in our future. We have the Parks and Recreation Capital Improvement Bond. So several parks in the municipality, lots of our neighborhood parks that are getting some upgrades to them. And so this is Nunaka Valley Park, East Chester, several others that are on the list. Town Square Park actually has there's a component in there for Town Square Park, and you're going to see Town Square Park this summer under construction. New redesign happening there. There's some improvements to a few of our trails, the Campbell Creek Trail, as well as the Fish Creek Trail, which is under development. These are getting some funding from this Parks Bond this year, should it pass. I think that our park system is such a crown jewel for Anchorage. We want to make sure that it is well maintained and kept up. Good projects in there. The Chugach State Park Access Service Area. This includes some funding for the Basher Trailhead, is the biggest piece of it, which is pictured right here up Basher Road. It's the trail that allows you to access Near Point and Wolverine Peak, and then also the Lost Cabin Trail extension, and some wayfinding and access for the Stewart Trail as well, over in Potter Valley area. So the mayor always likes to say that the Chugach State Park is one of the reasons that for many people it's why they live in Anchorage, and so having that asset there, I think, is just something that's really important to us as a municipality. Thank goodness it worked. So this is I want to mention it here too. Last year the voters approved the snow levy, which we put to great effect, $3.5 million. We used that to purchase some new snow removal equipment, and we've been able to really get our snow plow out times down significantly. And we've been featured in some national publications and Bloomberg for the innovation of our snow solutions team. And as you know, we have the snowplow naming competition. So you can see that, we've got Big Leplowski and Ghost Grader and Drift Lifter, here on the doing their thing. This GPS tracking thing has been a big hit this year as well. But like to report back, this was something voters approved last year, and something that has had a lot of success. So when these projects get approved, when these ballot propositions get approved, they become investment in our community, and that really improve us in a visible way. This is a little bit of some of the financial information about the bonds. These all add up. All of the municipal bonds add up to about $65 million. If you add up the cost per 100,000, I should have put another column in here. It actually adds up to exactly $14 per 100,000, down to the penny, which is just a great coincidence. And here you have the cost to the average Anchorage home as well, figured at about $450,000. So that's some of the financial information. One last thing I'll mention too: the education levy. This is something that was proposed by the mayor. Will allow us the municipality of Anchorage historically provides funding to Anchorage School District up to the maximum that's allowed under state law. There's a cap to how much local governments can contribute, and Anchorage historically contributes up to that cap. In order to do so this year, with some of the recent changes that were made, it would take about another $12 million, and we figured that the best way that we had to get that would be to put it out to voters and say, hey, Do you want to provide this funding to the school district that will retain 80 or more educators and keep class sizes down? I get the question a lot. Well, how do we know the school district is really going to put it towards teachers and supports for students? And the answer to that is that there is legally binding language in the ballot proposition that says that that's the only use for it. I'm a father of a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and the mayor sees it as a very important priority that we are supporting our public school system. And so we have put that forth for voter consideration as well. So lastly, all the name of the game is positive community impacts with critical road improvements, upgrades to community buildings, more trails, better access to Chugach State Park, revitalize neighborhood parks, and commitment to our future through education. Let's be happy to talk and take any questions that folks have.
Thanks, Nolan. We did get a couple in the chat. I'll start with our first one. Does our bond share fully and capture federal and state available funding? Is that attempted to be put into the bond every year?
Yeah. Okay. I think I understand the question. We so our capital improvement budget each year. We notice that the state column is blank, but there is federal there. It does include federal in there as well. Some of that federal money that's in there is to match, or is some of our bond money, especially in the roads, actually matches some of the federal money, so allows us to get some of that federal money. The state funding, very interesting, because of world events, there might actually be some capital funding coming to Anchorage this year, but the last few years, we have not expected much of any. Just because the state's been under fiscal duress. So our bonds, our bond projects are really projects where we say, for the most part, some of them go to that federal match, but for the most part, they're projects where we say we need to get this done, and this is really our only way to do it. And so we put it in the bond. Some of those same projects in years past, we might have been able to ask the state for it. We will still continue to ask the state for funding, but we put them in a bond because we have some amount we can control that locally, and we can't control what happens with the state, and so that's why it's that way. But historically, we would use both bonds and state funding as our main capital budget tools.
Yeah. Another question was, has the municipality's credit rating been adversely affected by the non-timely issuance of the annual financial report?
Yeah. My understanding is that the biggest reason so the municipality has a good bond rating. First of all, I'd say we're in the premium tier of bond ratings. We did have our bond rating did decline a few years ago, and that was largely about the issue. The biggest reason for that was because you're supposed to maintain a certain amount of reserves. And we had challenges as in a prior administration with our FEMA reimbursement from the 2018 earthquake, where we had to spend a whole bunch of money, and then the federal government was going to pay us back, and it took a long time for that to happen. And so our reserves were low because of that. So that was the biggest reason for that. Despite that, we do retain a very good credit rating. The municipality of Anchorage is seen as being very creditworthy, but the annual comprehensive financial report is something that does factor into that. We're on track to get those up to speed, but once they had fallen behind, it takes us a while, and we're playing catch up. We're on track to get them done, but it does take a little bit of time.
Yeah. And don't forget, people, you can raise your hand or drop a question in the chat. We've got one. Where are we in the current ACFAR cycle? And if you know what he's talking about, would you explain what an ACFAR is for those who may not know?
Yes. The annual comprehensive financial report for the municipality is that's our audited financials that we have to do each year. I am looking for, actually, I have that information in here somewhere.
On the fly.
Yes. So we had to we're working on the 2024 and then 2025 ACFR, and the 2024 ACFR is due imminently. I think in the coming weeks, and then the 2025 ACFR will be done. Will be done either. I think it's the end of this year or early 2027. So we started off in a when we came into office, the ACFR was way behind. We had to finish up, get the 2022 ACFR done right away, and then get the 2023 ACFR done, and it was in 2025 when we got that done. So it is behind. You can't finish one, or you can't get into one until you finish the prior years completely. And so they really do have to be sequenced. So when something caused them to fall behind, it takes a long time to play catch up. We have a really good team doing that right now and getting us caught up on it. And they have moved mountains, and so it's in good shape, but it's not done yet.
Can you explain how that relates to the bonds?
Um, well, I don't. It does have some impact. Overall financial performance is reflected in that document. I don't know that there's a direct relationship between what we put into our bond package and then what getting the ACFRs done at a certain
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a question. What happens if the funding in a bond that is approved by voters is not fully used?
Um, let's see. So we don't actually get, the way that it works is that if we have you can have unspent bonding authority, then it means that voters aren't taxed for that amount. We only issue what we need for the actual project, and so this does sometimes happen. It means that we're not drawing that and then not collecting taxes on it is the usual way. There is also there is also some substitutions that are allowable too, where if a project can't be done that's listed in the bond, then you can substitute for a different one. There's some legal allowances around that, but it really is like, you do it for a specific purpose for a specific project.
So do we take all the funds out at once when the bond is issued, or is it taken out over periods? Like, does the municipality immediately start accruing that debt and that interest?
No, it's kind of interesting how it works. Actually, is that the departments who are doing the work that's on the bond, they essentially start issuing the RFPs, getting the projects going, and then the public finance division, basically they issue bonds as needed to fund that work that's being done. Is how it works. So then
Okay.
they know they have actual dollar amounts to work with, and then they issue debt for that amount, and then that funds those projects.
So if we didn't hit the max on the allotment for the bond, that money never would have been taken out in the first place then.
Exactly, then it wouldn't have been
Okay.
taken out. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's how it goes.
We have another question. Can you elaborate on the regulatory provisions that limit the municipality's contributions to ASD and how it was that we were allowed to contribute more this year? Just to maybe simplify that question a little bit too,
Yeah.
is why a one-time levy? Why this year? If school is really important, is this not something we can do every year? What's kind of different?
Yeah. So, big thing. It's school funding is kind of fascinating how it works. There's a mandatory contribution that local governments like us have to make, that the state says you have to do this much, and that's based on 2.65 mils of our full valuation as a municipality has to go to schools. That's and then in addition to that, that's the required local contribution. There's an optional local contribution as well, that's defined in state law. And when the base student allocation last year was increased, it wasn't increased by enough to make up for years of inflation and flat funding, but it was increased. With the increase in the base student allocation, our optional contribution also went up a bit too. And a very interesting thing that happened as well, even though the base student allocation went up, the state actually gave us less money, is giving us less money this year than they did last year, because of that required local contribution going up, because it goes up with our property. As property values go up, it goes up. So it's just very like there gets to be a lot of weird moving parts to this. But the long story short is that our optional contribution went up, and that left us without the ability. The municipality can't just pull $12 million out of nowhere, and we weren't willing to cut $12 million worth of services that we provide elsewhere. So we said, well, if we want to fund up to our allowable max, like we historically have, that's a new number than it has been in the past. So we will put that question to voters. The reason why it's a one-time thing is because the amount next year is we don't know what it's going to be. It's going to be something different. And also, there's probably going to be some funding for schools and state legislation, and there's going to be some other factors that might change what the amount might be. And so we are putting it out there as a one-time issue, and then subsequent years we will have to come up with, there will probably be a different solution. This is the one of the things about education funding is that from one year to the next there isn't always great predictability, and that's largely about state legislation.
Thank you. Why do we have bonds in the first place? Why is maintenance not part of our general budget? And some of that might have to do with the cap. If you
Mhm.
can explain a little bit about that.
Yeah. So if you're using bonds, it has to be to create to create or repair a physical asset. But there's lots of routine maintenance that we do. That's when our crews go out and fill potholes. That's an operating budget expense. When they go and do repairs of buildings, on mechanical system repairs and other, that's operating expense. But when it comes to like, okay, well, we need to resurface a road. Now we're talking about essentially creating a new capital asset for the municipality, and that's something that we would bond for. It also gets to a larger expense category that would be hard to pull out of our operating budget. Most of our operating budget is largely goes to personnel to deliver services, right? And so there are lots of kinds of expenses that would be large expenses that occur, one time, that make more sense for bonds. So that's why we do that. But there are a lot of things that look like routine, maintenance in our bond package that really just can't be in our operating budget. Some of that's because we have a tax cap, but also because it is, a different expense category, and it is still something that results in an asset, right?
Mhm.
So that's why we do that.
Yeah, does anybody online have any questions? I have I've got one more. Why are access to the state parks something that is a local thing? Like, why does that fall in municipality instead of state, or is that matching funds? It's the Chukiak Access State Park, right? The CASA. Is that the
Yeah,
acronym
Giga
for
State
it?
Park Access Service Area. Why is it a municipal issue? Well, it's a really good question because those are state parks, right? Um, but we see that there's a lot of value for the municipality and a lot of residents of the municipality who use those parks, and if there's enough, if there's enough interest, as there has been, in having the municipality work on some of those access improvements, then we think it makes sense to put that to voters. And this isn't something that started with this administration. This is the CASA has been around for a while. So it's something that allows that our Anchorage residents can take advantage of, and that is primarily used by Anchorage residents, and that isn't going to get done. A lot of the things that we're funding, they're not going to get done in a state budget either. So we feel that they enhance the municipality, they enhance our quality of life as residents. So they are worth funding. We also worth noting that that's one of the smaller components in our bond package too. It's not the same kind of magnitude as like our park bond that we have for Anchorage parks.
Yeah, but it's something that regularly occurs, right? Like I feel like I hear assembly members talk about CASA bonds pretty regularly, so it's something that comes up annually or biannually.
Yeah, we did have a package last year. I don't remember if there was anything before that. The amount last year was a small amount for some planning and design funds. So it hasn't been. There's not a lot of money that has gone into that. But yes, it has been around for a while. for a little while, for a couple of years.
Thank you. Well, is there anything else you want to talk about with these bonds in particular while we have a little bit more time? It doesn't seem like we've got a ton of questions on the group.
Yeah, yeah. I would, I'd put some emphasis on the fact that really, if we for our infrastructure in Anchorage, our bond package is really the most significant tool that we have to make to keep our infrastructure up and to build anything new that needs to be built. The mayor does have the philosophy that we don't need to build a lot of things that create new expensive obligations for us in perpetuity. That's why we really need to put out, for that we really emphasize taking care of the assets that we have. I think that's a really important theme. So we put out a very fiscally responsible bond package. It's about keeping things secure and making sure that we're able to use we use the infrastructure that we have, and that it stays kept in good shape.
Awesome.
Yeah, Casa is pretty new. We did have there was a Casa bond last year, but but yeah, this is the first kind of bigger capital project funded out of it. Um, and bonds as economic engines, yeah, also something really important too. This is our construction industry, gets a lot of value out of it, keep a lot of people employed too. Also very important as well. And the fact that they happen every year. Sometimes federal money comes and goes. Sometimes private construction sort of comes and goes. I think our bond package is something that's usually every year. There's something in that, and it does maintain a certain amount of economic output. So I think that is a very good point, Stephen.
Awesome. Well, if we don't have any more questions, oh, we've got one more. How much bonded indebtedness will be
Oh, yep.
retired in 2026?
Yes, yes, good question. It's
And will you explain what that means a little bit?
Yep. Yeah, and
Thanks.
that's a really good point. I probably should have mentioned too is that we aren't just adding debt every year. We are also retiring debt. So bonds are usually 20 years. So the bonds from 20 years ago, this year, are being paid off, and so that amounts to about a little over $33 million that was issued in about 2006. And you might be thinking, well, $33 million that we're retiring, and then we're issuing, $65 million. But that's from 20 years ago. That actually would be the 33 million would be about 53 million today. So generally speaking, what we're doing is we're usually issuing an amount that's pretty similar to the amount that's being retired once it's adjusted for inflation. So our annual debt service and our total amount that we have in debt has been pretty stable at the municipality. Our bond packages each year have been really pretty flat as the years have gone by. In fact, I have a graph somewhere where I did an adjustment for inflation, and we actually are kind of trending in a more conservative direction. If you look at the bond packages that we had 15 or so years ago, they're actually a little bit more than now once adjusted for inflation.
And people talk a lot about bonds and they talk a lot about property taxes. The timeline, say all the bonds were passed, what would be the timeline? When would people start to see that reflected in their property tax? Can you just give us a little bit of the process for after bonds are approved, how that goes about affecting taxpayers?
Yeah, yeah. Once approved, then that gets calculated into the mill levy. So the mill levy that you're paying, on your property taxes now, includes debt service on all the past bond packages, that are in there. That's all built into that mill rate that you're paying. So each bond package each year is adding as a pretty small amount of that total. But it's something that you're that's the part of the question we're putting to voters, is that, are you willing to incur these costs for this bond that we're putting out? So yes, but it is factored into what you're paying for your property taxes, and the mill levy is set with the quarter 1 budget revision that happens in April.
Cool. Any final questions? Give you one last call. Could you could you make these classes mandatory for anyone running for office? I feel like people wanting to make these decisions on what is or isn't on a bond should have these kinds of informational sessions. Well, I think that just means that we're doing a great job here on the Local Lens series, and I'll ping that everything is recorded and up on our YouTube. We had a really great conversation about the municipal budget process last year, kind of an explainer of how all of that went. I dropped a link for the capital improvement project process as well. If you are part of your community council and curious about how that process works and how community councils are part of it, you can watch that recording from last year. So, and if you have ideas for another local lens you want to see, you can email us at info@communitycouncils.org. I'm always looking for new ideas about who we need to hear from, because I will say I'm confused often. There's a lot of acronyms out there. Yeah. Anything, Nolan, you want to just end on really quickly?
I think that's about it for me. I can put my email address in the chat, and and I'm happy to answer any questions that folks have or anything that your community council has that you want to know more about. And if you haven't voted already, August 5th, or sorry, August April 7th is the deadline. So
Covering up
remember to
my
get your
address,
ballots
but
in
I
for that.
just voted today.
Good, good. I find when I talk to community councils, they're always the highly engaged folks that are super voters, and a lot of times they're like, "Oh yeah, I already sent mine in, days ago." So after you,
The,
so
they
I
should
try
have
to
a
hit
prize.
I try to hit them before the ballots get out, because otherwise they've already voted. It's a
Yeah.
very engaged group. So
They should have a prize for whoever submits their ballot the first. Like,
yep,
congratulations.
yep.
Well, thank you, Nolan. Thanks everybody for joining us today. And thanks for sharing your expertise and answering our questions. We do have another local lens coming up in April to be announced. So keep your eyes peeled on our newsletter for more information. You can register on our website to receive our neighbor to neighbor newsletter at communitycouncils.org. You can also find us on YouTube, youtube.com/at community councils. And if you have any ideas or questions, info@communitycouncils.org. Thank you guys again and have a lovely evening. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.